Have you ever visited a museum? It's like stepping into a different world, isn't it? The Smithsonian is one of the most prestigious museums in the world. Its vision is to build on its unique strengths to engage and to inspire more people where they are with greater impact while catalyzing critical conversations on issues affecting our nation and the world. Now, the Korean American story and the contribution of Korean Americans to the United States is not a well-known story, so I pose my students the question. You have just been hired to curate this special exhibit at the Smithsonian. As experts of each exhibit, your group will also serve as docents or guides of the exhibit, highlighting the key achievements to guests. Guests could be other groups, other classes, schools, partnering schools, and organizations. So how will we do this? Each team in the class will become docents or experts of their topic and curate their exhibit. Each team will then present the exhibit to the class first and then later to other students, parents, and the community. Now I'm going to use an example of the Korean American portion of the Model Ethnic Studies curriculum, but really this idea can be applied to so many different groups. So what might Team 1 in my class do? Maybe it's going to be a medieval and modern Korea collage. What are 10 culturally honoring things about the culture, history, and traditions of Korea as they create this digital collage? That's the first exhibit. They might find some of those resources in sample lesson 27, Korean popular culture in the United States. Now, students might begin with K-pop and Korean food, but that's just the beginning of their learning. Team 2. Team 2 might focus on the Korean American timeline using the quick facts found in the ethnic studies curriculum. So they're looking at that fact sheet and they're highlighting important events in their exhibit. Team 3. Early Korean American immigration in the 1900s. This will be to better understand the Korean American experience in multi-ethnic America, the stories and lives of Koreans who lived at Pachapa Camp, currently in Riverside, California, the first Koreatown, USA, established by DOSAN An Chang-ho in 1905. They might look at the ethnic studies curriculum where there's some video links to footsteps of Korean Americans. Team 4, they might look at sample lesson 23, Korean American leader DOSAN An Chang-ho. Team 5 might look at the Korean independence movement and look at sample lesson 24, where they take a close look at the Korean American unity for independence in 1920 to 1945. Team 6, the Korean American Church, and perhaps they'll get some information from the sample lesson 23. Once again, from Korean American leader DOSAN An Chang-ho, you can't really completely grasp the whole Korean American experience without understanding the Korean American Church. Team number 7 may focus on Colonel Young-ok Kim, once again a war hero and public servant, found in sample lesson 22. Team number 8 might focus on Dr. Sammy Lee, looking at sample lesson 27 as a look at a humanitarian and world-class diver. Team number 9 focus on the Korean War. For thousands of years, Korea was one homogeneous people, and today it's very different. So the effects perhaps as well of the Korean War. Team number 10 might look at the HART-CELLER Act of 1965. On October 3rd, 1965, the HART-CELLER Act of 1965 opened the door for immigration to the United States. So for a long time, many Asian Americans, most Asian Americans were excluded immigration to the United States. But then after 1965, the door opened and there's been a growth of Korean Americans in the United States. Team number 11, focusing on the Korean American experience and inter-ethnic relations. They might look at sample lesson 21. Every team might have like another place where they look at important Asian American historical figures or Korean American historical figures and have a place for that in this exhibit. Oral histories. There might be another exhibit which captures the oral histories of my students who are sharing their stories, and also their parents who may be sharing their stories as well. In EdFamily, we're helping our students to find out what they're good at so that they can do good with it. So what they learn, they're going to share, whether the classes, schools, partnering schools, and organizations. Now, I know I talked about Korean Americans, but if I were teaching an Asian American Studies class, perhaps I would look at the model curriculum, the source material, and provide and use the source material for Chinese Americans, Japanese Americans, Filipino Americans, Cambodian Americans, Pacific Islander, Hmong, South Asian, Vietnamese Americans, Sikh Americans. If I were teaching an ethnic studies class, perhaps there would be an exhibit for the African American exhibit, Chicano Latinx exhibit, Native American exhibit. The Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum was adopted on March 18, 2021 in California. So I'm going to give a little disclaimer that this is just in the idea phase right now, but I think it's a cool idea, and it lines up really well with my desire to have students be able to know their story, tell their story, have others listen with empathy and respect, and then to do something good with their story. And all the while, as students are exploring their own journey, they're also growing in the 5 C's. They're growing in communication. They're growing in collaboration. They're growing in creativity. They're growing in critical thinking. They're growing in creativity, and they're growing in compassion. You know, Professor Gloria Ladson Billings, in her article, Culturally Relevant Pedagogy, states and defines cultural competence as the ability to help students appreciate and celebrate their culture of origin while gaining knowledge of and fluency in at least one other culture. I see this virtual museum project as one step in that right direction. This video marks the 26th EdFamily video that I've created. And when I first started in July, after being inspired by one of my classes at Cal State Fullerton to create vlogs, I made a goal to create one video a week. And my hope was, by the end of the year, to have a collection of 52 videos. Now, I thought that was a very, very ambitious goal at that time, but here I am. It's July, now it's 2 months later, and we're at 26 videos. So thank you so much for your appreciation, encouragement, and support. This is Dr. Jeff, signing out.